I like Sherwood when it's like this. Sherwood Forest, not the suburb of Nottingham, Sherwood, but this is Broad Drive. One time of day this would have been a busy thoroughfare in sort of medieval times and the most important route through the forest, but it's completely deserted. No one coming that way and no one coming that way. The forest becomes a peaceful oasis. But unfortunately, I'm heading out of this peaceful oasis. I'm heading down there, and I really ought to take a bunch of flowers, because that's typically what you would do when you're going to visit somebody that's very poorly. Well, here's one of my favourite little sort of nooks and crannies in Sherwood, and it's an area, a small area, maybe 20 square metres at best, right at the side of Broad Drive, and thousands of people will walk past this area during the course of any year. But it contains a rather special plant in Nottinghamshire, and the plant that you can see is covering the ground in front and being beautifully backlit by this morning sunshine, and it's bilberry. Bilberry is a rather innocuous looking scruffy plant, really. Obviously it has berries, but it's rare in Nottinghamshire. There's very few areas of bilberry. The best part of Nottinghamshire for bilberry is in the Thieves Wood area where it grows, but I've never seen a patch the size of this one here in the country park. So a rare plant in Sherwood, and everybody walks past it because, in all honesty, it looks nothing even when it's in flower. The flowers are pretty insignificant, and they are visited by bees, so it's an important nectar source. But I always like this little spot because it's always lit nicely by the sun. Sometimes appearances can be somewhat deceiving regarding many of the ancient oaks in Sherwood Forest. And here's one tucked away, not the largest of old trees, and to be quite honest, there's not a great deal left of it. But if you was to approach this tree from the left, you would see what appeared to be a full and complete trunk. There might not be much top left on this tree now, but the trunk and the bark on the trunk approaching from the left looks absolutely fine and healthy. However, if you was to approach from the right, not only would you fall over the majority of this trunk that split off and came down many years ago, but you would see that this tree, or at least the trunk, is little more than 6 inches to a foot wide at its widest point. You're looking almost at one side of a tree, and it's amazing that this tree is still standing. And personally, I think it's only still standing because it's surrounded and protected by an army of silver birch, young silver birch, from when this area was cleared of most of its pines many years ago. Quite a little character, this tree, one that many people don't see because it's tucked away at the side of a quiet path here at Sherwood. but it's an absolute little beauty. How it's still standing. It's amazing that it is. And here is Sherwood Forest's oldest and one of the most poorly residents that have come to visit. This is the mighty major oak. Despite the fact that this tree is clearly dying, a process which has been exaggerated since 2022, since the heat wave of 2022, it is unfortunately on its way out. Now, the death of this tree could take anything from a year to 50 years yet. But the difference within a few years since 2022 is astounding. And if you haven't been and visited the major oak in the last 10, 15, 20 years, you will probably be aghast at how it has declined. It's no fault of anybody's. I'm not having a go at the RSPB here or any of the other authorities. I just wish that they would own up and admit that despite the best efforts, this major oak is indeed declining towards death. It happens with trees. After all, this is a tree between 800 and 1200 years old. There's still a certain amount of foliage on the far side of the tree, or on the right hand side of the tree as we look at it here, but on this near side and on the left of the tree, it's virtually devoid of foliage, and that foliage is going to decline in amount each year. And the root structure of this tree is also declining too. It does on all the ancients. When an ancient oak falls over for whatever reason in Sherwood Forest, it doesn't bring a root ball up with it or a root plate. It just more or less snaps at the bottom, and that's because these trees are completely hollow from top to below ground. And as the top dies off and rots, so do the roots too, and that's what's happening here. There's been lots of claims which the various authorities looking after this tree have refuted, claims on social media and in the local media that the major oak is dying. Everybody can see it, but the powers that be won't admit it. But it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just one of those things of a tree of this age that can't adapt and cope with extremes of weather. And those extremes aren't the wetness of the weather that we're getting, it's those hot dry periods we get. Looks a sorry state, doesn't it? And indeed it is in a sorry state, but as I say, it's the age of the tree. I came here a couple of weeks ago, and the great and the good of the Sherwood Forest world were here, and they were up in the tree and around the tree, measuring this and measuring that and doing everything but say the tree is dying. And I understand why they don't want people to believe that it's dying. It's not good publicity, but this is what you're going to see, I'm afraid. And when you think about it, a tree of that age, it's a remarkable age for any oak tree, for any tree full stop, if it is as old as they say it is. And we should remember that ancient trees like major oak and all the other ancient oaks in Sherwood Forest are only here because of one thing, because they weren't growing straight enough when they wanted the wood to build the ships many years ago. If they'd been tall and straight rather than crooked and wrinkly and mangled, this tree behind me wouldn't be here at all.